Ladies and gents, welcome back to another episode of In the Corner. I'm your host, Cash, and today we've got a very good episode, 125, and we're going to recap a huge weekend in combat sports, almost all centering around Las Vegas, where not only did you have Raymond Muratalla defending his IBF lightweight championship against Andy Cruz in what turned out to be a great fight and an upset there. You had the debut of Dana White's Zuffa Boxing, lots to talk about, and most importantly, UFC 324, the start of the Paramount Plus era. What a show, and what a fight between Justin Gaethje and Paddy Pimblett in the main event, where Gaethje upsets Paddy, wins the interim championship, and just straight up, that fight was just a straight dog fight, and we're going to talk about all of it. There's so much to talk about, so let's start off just there. Gaethje and Pimblett, I mean, wow. Like, that was, I know it's early, but I have to think that at the end of 2026, we're going to sit down and we're going to start, similar to what we've been doing the last few weeks, we're going to talk about what were the best moments of this year, what was the best fight of this year. And I would be shocked if Justin versus Paddy is not on that list, because this was 5 rounds of straight violence. We know this is what Justin Gaethje is about. You know, they call him the human highlight. All he does is violence. Now 14, now 15 post-fight bonuses. They won fight of the night. There was no other option. And he comes in here as the older guy, you know, back into his career, retirement talks. Paddy is this new star rising up, undefeated in the UFC, but this is his biggest test. And almost immediately, Gaethje's just like, all right, let's do this, and drops Paddy. I mean, when he dropped Paddy in round 1, I thought that was it. And there was multiple moments in this fight where I thought that Paddy was done, and he just continued to keep on fighting. I was really impressed with his straight heart and grit, and he would not give up. I mean, he says it before the fight, Scousers don't get knocked out, and they don't. I mean, look, Paddy's a guy who, there's always been a lot of these like fraud check allegations, you know, like, is he really that guy? Is he actually this superstar? And he is a very, very good mixed martial artist, but I think we saw, maybe he wasn't ready for this top level just yet. And Justin Gaethje, maybe he's still got it more than we thought, and he's still a top lightweight and has been a staple of this division for the majority of the last decade, if not all of it. And I mean, we just saw him kind of turn back the years, and Paddy tried to compete. He tried to take it to the ground, but I mean, standing up, he was just not competitive with Justin. There was just a huge skill and power and boxing and striking differential. But look, I think Paddy walks away with this with a ton of respect. Like, we saw, this guy is about it. He is a legit fighter, and he'll throw down. He will throw down. And so, I enjoyed the hell out of that fight. I gave all 5 rounds to Justin Gaethje. I know some people give the third to Paddy the Baddy. I still gave it to Justin. I thought that he just kind of dog-walked him the whole fight. It was incredibly dominant and so surprising, because I walked into this fight picking Paddy. I said it was like around a 60-40 for me, but I thought Paddy was going to win, and I felt pretty good about that prediction, and I was definitely totally wrong. So, yeah, props to Justin. And look, he's going to get the next title shot, it seems. They did show Arman Tsarukyan after, looking very funny. Look, I had previously thought Arman deserves it, and I still think that, but I have to admit, I think either way, no matter what happened last night, I would have felt, okay, this guy gets the title shot now. So, and look, especially because Justin is an American and he's a proud American, it feels like Ilya versus Justin is a perfect fight to go on the White House card. We know they're going to want to stack it. You want to put as many Americans as you can on that event, and Ilya versus Justin makes a ton of sense. Maybe you do Arman versus Paddy in the meantime, Arman versus somebody else at the top of the division, I don't know, or he just sits out until the end of the year and fights the winner of Justin versus Ilya, but we know that's going to be next. And I'm glad that Justin's going to get one last shot at the title, but I'm afraid we all know how that's going to go, and that's Ilya by another vicious knockout. Just because I don't think that either of these guys, they put on a great fight, but I think Ilya probably knocks them both out. Anyways, speaking of Americans on the White House card, Sean O'Malley wins by unanimous decision over Song Yadong. A lot of people calling this one a robbery. And look, I think it was a close fight. I think Sean took the third, and I think that Song Yadong took the second. So it really just comes down to that round number 1. Who'd you have? I edged it to Sean. I thought that Song, he had him a little bit on the cage at the end of the round, had him down, but Sean was getting the better striking. I thought he did more damage in that round. I thought that he just, his jabs and his kicks, I thought that he was just a little bit cleaner with his work. So I edged it to him on that round. That was the only round that I was a little bit iffy on. But look, apparently most people gave it to Song. They thought it was a robbery. I didn't think so. But I thought it was a really good fight. All the fights on this card were pretty solid. But yeah, I thought Sugar Sean deserved the nod. And now, I mean, he He is a shot at the title, it seems. Look, you've got 4 guys at the top of this bantamweight division. We can just talk about it, too. Umar Nurmagomedov beating Davison Figueiredo 30-27, I believe, on all 3 cards. I had it 30-27. I actually thought that Figgy was a lot more competitive than I expected in that second round. He came back pretty well. But I still, Umar still won every round. And, just not as dominantly as we were expecting. But, that guy is still an absolute world-class wrestler. That was another fantastic fight. So I think that you got 4 guys at the top of the bantamweight picture, and any of these fights can happen. I think that there is a chance Merab and Peter Yan run it back for a trilogy. Merab did have that title for a while, made multiple defenses with it, and Sean even seems to think that, saying, I'll fight the winner of them if they choose to run it back. The other option is you do Yan versus Sean O'Malley, as he called him out, do it on the White House card, another American fighting for the title. That's a rematch. It would be of a controversial fight that first time around. You can do it, run it back, and it'd be a good one. And then in the meantime, you have Merab and Umar run back their fight from the beginning of 2025, which was another very, very beloved fight. That was the fight that really turned Merab into a star, the first one Umar ever lost, and the only one. So I think that makes a lot of sense either way. And if you do decide to do Merab versus Peter Yan next, I think you could do Sean versus Umar. I don't think they'll head in that direction. I think that they may do Sean versus Corey Sandhagen. That's a fight a lot of people have been calling for. And I think that may be a good idea just because it seems like Sean hasn't won everyone over in terms of getting, another title shot, as that was a little bit of a controversial decision. I hope Song Yadong gets another good fight next. Maybe do him and Davison Figueiredo. But, bantamweight's looking pretty good right now. Also on the card, Waldo Cortez Acosta finishing Derek Lewis in the second round. Look, we all kind of expected that fight to go that way. Waldo he's not young, he's 34, but Derek is 40, and Derek hasn't been as active. Waldo's been on a very active tear. He's been moving up the weight classes, not moving up the weight class, moving up the rankings within the weight class. And multiple stoppage victories in a row. I believe he's on a 3-fight win streak, all by finish now since losing in August. So, I kind of expected this first round a little bit boring, and then I don't know if it was a knockdown or whatever, but Derek just kind of goes down, and then Waldo gets on him and just finishes him. It was sad to see as a Derek Lewis fan, and you have to question how many fights does he have left in him at 40. He's looked not bad over the last few years, still getting wins, but, at some point you're going to have to hang him up. And, as for Waldo, I'm seeing a lot of people say Curtis Blaydes is probably next for him, and I like that fight a lot. I think that's probably a top 5 matchup, so good fight there. Natalia Silva robbing Rose Namajunas. Look, I don't think most people had it this way. I had Rose winning every round of the fight. I wasn't as locked in. I can't say I was the most locked in on this fight, but from what I saw, I thought that Rose won every round. I thought that she was completely outstriking her and was doing exactly what her name says, and she was being a thug. So I really did not like that decision. I thought it was a very bad robbery, especially knowing that she's likely to get the title shot versus Shevchenko after this, when I thought that Rose deserved that after tonight. Again, I had Natalia Silva a strong favorite heading into that fight, and I did not see that, winning performance. So I didn't like that one. Arnold Allen losing to Gian Silva. That was a hell of a fight. John Silva just doing exactly what he is and just being a very explosive fighter, and as is Arnold Allen, but John Silva just kind of crazier, and emoting on him, and then jumping off. He jumps onto Allen's back at the end of the fight and then leaps off and hits a pose. Just an absolute madman, but that was a really fun fight to watch. He's still in the top 10 at featherweight. So now you question what's next for him. I saw somebody say he could fight Yair Rodriguez. I like that one a lot. Lots of fun fights at 145 pounds, but John Silva, who had an interesting week PR-wise, I feel like he had a lot more haters this week than he usually does, but I think he won a lot of people back last night. Ateba Gauthier going the distance for the first time in the UFC, still undefeated in the UFC, won that by, 30-27 on my card, 29-28 on 2 of the judges, and 30-27 on the other one. I thought that he won every round. I thought Pulev, he had the more impressive performance of the two to be able to stay in there that whole time with Gauthier, where I thought the knockout almost happened a number of times. I think Ateba just needs to work on his conditioning, and I use that word conditioning and not gas tank, because he wasn't tired per se. He wasn't he was just slowing down, where he would hurt Pulev and he'd unload a lot of shots, and then he would stop throwing for 30 seconds because he needed it to kind of recharge, build up. So I think that he definitely needs to work on his conditioning and his work rate and figuring out the right times to, just his pacing of his attacks. But, it is what it is. Not the showcase knockout I'm sure he would have wanted, but it still looked good. Before that, you had the buzzer beaters. I mean, Nikita Krylov, last round of the fight, knocks out Modestas Bukauskas with the 3 seconds on the clock, I think. That was super impressive, especially coming into this fight. I had Bukauskas a pretty strong favorite, and I had given Krylov all 2 of the first 2 rounds, and then third he was leading and then knocks him out. So great win for him. He's going to hold on to his ranking at 205 pounds off of getting beaten twice in a row. And then you've got Alex Perez coming in, first round TKO over Charles Johnson. That was very unexpected. Again, another upset. Huge stoppage there. The Joe Rogan call right before, like, oh, this is smart moving, and then Charles Johnson gets knocked out right after. Probably for having that haircut. And then Josh Hokett, another buzzer beater, finishes his man at the end of the first round. That guy is very, very interesting. His post-fight speeches, I don't like a lot of the stuff he says. I think it's kind of fucked up, some of the things he decides to say. But I have to say, the guy is straight out of pro wrestling. He's really funny. He's great with these speeches he gives out, and it is entertaining, and that's what you got to do in this game. But yeah, he's also fights like a madman, just so aggressive with his wrestling and his striking. And, it finishes the job on Denzel Freeman via middle finger, flips him off as Freeman quits at the end of the first round. That was some villain shit. And then you also, and look, I called it, Josh Hokett calls out Waldo Cortez Acosta. I don't hate it. It's not going to happen because Waldo is far ahead of Hokett, a fight I would like to see for Hokett, and I know this won't happen, but Gable Steveson, we know, is going to make his UFC debut this year. A lot of people think it could be on the White House. Josh Hokett, a very patriotic guy, you could say. And look, 2 up-and-coming, I believe both undefeated heavyweight prospects in the UFC, both American on that White House card. Makes a lot of sense to me. I know they're both on the rise-ups. You want to save it until they're both ranked and contenders, but I would not mind seeing that fight at all. And then opening up the main card in his UFC debut, Ty Miller beating the brakes off Adam Fugit for another buzzer beater finish. Very impressive. He also got a performance of the night bonus, as did Josh Hokett. So yeah, I really enjoyed this card. I thought the first half was like all these finishes and it was crazy, and then a lot of decisions after that. And earlier start time was nice. Unfortunately, because the main card was so many decisions, it still ended up finishing around 12:40 a.m. So not really much different. And you had the intro with Bruce Buffer in the cage. They showed the whole that curtain and Paramount Plus, and they have the whole video package showing the history of the UFC. I thought that was super cool. Made this event and debut really feel historic and important, which you don't usually get to see from the UFC. They don't do all that showbiz kind of stuff, so it was exciting to watch. One thing on Bruce Buffer, him announcing Fugit versus Miller wrong was definitely a weird moment. Like, that's not the right way you want to start it off, but he stayed strong with it and didn't, it would have been worse if he decided to, realized halfway and was like, oh crap, I got to switch this up. But it is what it is, and we move on, and he did great for the rest of the night. Also a ref in the middle of one of the fights, I think it was the Gaethje fight, tears his ACL, Mark Smith, and he has to be carried out. That was insane. Just a lot of weird stuff happened, including in the build-up. Cameron Smotherman at the weigh-in, he was supposed to fight and then just passes out off the scales, had a tough weight cut evidentially. He says it wasn't. I don't really buy that, but they're going to get down to what exactly happened. It was a very scary feint. You don't usually see that kind of stuff. We know that this happens sometimes. We hear about fighters getting hospitalized from weight cuts, but you don't see it on the weigh-in stage. That was definitely kind of scary. Obviously, you have the Michael Bisping moment where he says, like, it's not hard, is it? And then Smotherman passes out behind him. That was very funny. You had another betting scandal avoided. Michael Johnson, Alex Hernandez. All of a sudden, all the money started piling on Michael Johnson to win. So the UFC pulls the fight hours before, which I think was a good call. Obviously, it's a little bit disappointing because we lost what was going to be a good fight. But, it's what you got to do when you have stuff like this. You want to avoid it. They had a huge scandal in November. The FBI investigated. We heard all about it. So, right idea. And then also the bonuses. Now $100K instead of $50K. And if you get a finish, you get $25K. And that's only if you don't already get a bonus. Or, for example, Hokett and Miller, we know they already got performance of the night. They're not going to get an extra $25K. But Waldo Cortez Acosta, Nikita Krylov, and Alex Perez, they're all going to get finish bonuses as well because they finished their opponents, and I think they should. So good for them. Now, we are going to talk about Zuffa Boxing. Before we do that, let's talk about Raymond Muratalla, Andy Cruz. What a performance from Muratalla and Andy Cruz. They put on a hell of a fight. It was very close. I think that the right way to have it is either 114-114 or 115-113 for Ray. I did think that, especially in the back half of that fight, he kind of made it he was the more powerful puncher, and he inflicted that power a lot more. And you could tell Cruz, he was boxing well, but just kind of felt those shots, and it felt like a lot of it, his pacing slowed down, and he just kind of got tricked into fighting Muratalla's fight and more of a slugging, power punching kind of affair where he can't compete power wise. He's a better boxer than Muratalla, but Muratalla's got he's got more in those gloves. So, yeah, I was very impressed with Muratalla. Coming into this fight, we were all picking Andy Cruz to win, and I said that I thought Andy Cruz was going to win, but Muratalla was a very live dog in it as the defending champion, that he had a real chance to win. There was another 60-40 kind of fight, and he pulled off the upset. I thought the reaction from Cruz was a little bit because, he wants to maintain that he won the fight. And look, it was a close fight. You're not crazy if you have Cruz winning that. I think that most people would agree Muratalla did. But, he's trying to hype up right before they read out the scorecards. And then it says, and still, and he kind of goes down. It's like, eesh. But Muratalla, I thought he had a lot of class. And also, all week, including after the fight, he's just been stone cold. Like, very nonchalant. He's just stone cold, no reaction, just like, yeah, it is what it is. I got the job done. Really impressive kind of just mental state, I guess. So, it's almost like he knew something that we didn't. And he definitely did because, man, like this was really his coming out party as a lightweight champion. First title defense, first actual title fight for him as well. Some people saying, oh, is it too early for Andy Cruz to get in there? Maybe. This was only his 7th professional fight. Not that many guys go into the World Championships that early in their careers. But, it is... He came in. His professional debut was a 10-rounder, and he worked his way up those rankings. This was not them getting a voluntary title defense. He was ordered. He was kind of ready. And look, it was just a close fight, and that's okay. He's got a lot of good fights. Everyone's talking about him potentially moving down to 130. If he does, I saw someone suggest he could fight Abraham Nova. That's a tremendous fight. Makes a lot of sense. Cruz would definitely, beat him pretty good, but if Cruz moves down to 130, okay. Muratalla seems like he may move up to 140. There was rumors before this fight he would move up to 140 and then just decided to stay for this Cruz fight. He said he wants the winner of Shakur versus Teofimo, as does everybody and their moms. Look, if Shakur stays at 140, maybe he moves up to try and get a fight there. I think there's a lot of other guys ahead of him in line. If Shakur comes back down to 135 after winning, and, it's same for Teofimo, because we know Teofimo will stay at 140, but Shakur, I just think Shakur's going to win. If Stevenson does come back down to 135, then you have a unification fight right there. But I don't think it's going to happen. People are talking about, Muratalla Schofield, Muratalla Roach, Muratalla Shakur, lots of names for the IBF champion, but I would not be surprised if he ends up moving up. I would love him to stay at 135 because there's so many good fights for him, but everybody is trying to move up, and he said he wants to move up, and 135 is a tough cut for him. I mean, we can see he's a very big lightweight. I thought that the size difference between the two of them was very noticeable, and that's why he says, look, I think Cruz needs to move back down. I couldn't feel his punches, and that is definitely a thing. Now, co-main event there, Jesus. I mean, Khalil Ko, what a disappointing weekend for him. I mean, he wins the fight. Nobody thinks he wins the fight, or maybe some people do. I thought it was I would pick Jesse Hart to win that fight again. I was not really focused on it because it was such a terrible watch, very messy. Both had points deducted. Khalil Ko came in way overweight and gets kind of cleaned up by Hart in those first 4 rounds, and I thought Hart wins the last 2 after Ko wins rounds 5 through 8. I had it 95-93 for Hart, and I feel like that was a pretty popular scorecard. Scorecards themselves were 94-94, and then 95-93 and 96-92 for Khalil Ko. Giving Ko 7 rounds of that fight is just ridiculous. I thought he looked terrible. And, people are starting to talk about, like, dude, after the weight thing he pulled and now, doing this and having a messy fight and then even potentially robbing Hart, Matchroom may drop him, and I would kind of hope so. If they do, or, you can try and find a way to get him dropped, have him fight Ben Whitaker. Ben Whitaker could fight either of these guys. You can have him fight Jesse Hart, who just had a very good performance that nobody was expecting, and then that's your U.S. debut. Or you can have him go into a prospect versus prospect fight and have him fight Khalil Ko. I think the former is more possible, and then giving Hart another shot after he kind of got hard done. But, Khalil Ko, I think, is very much nearing his ceiling, and he may already be at it. So I wouldn't be surprised if he loses soon. Israel Madrimov goes the distance, does not look good at all. I thought he won just about every round versus Luis Salazar, but far better than Salazar. Like, huge differences in skill, and he wasn't able to get him out of there. There were some injuries. This is his first fight in almost a year, coming off pneumonia, we heard. So he was clearly not at 100%. Can't really blame him, but really just did not look himself. And, they're talking about Boots potentially, or, somebody at 154 is such a stacked division. I think he needs another
not another big fight, but another big win before he gets into those kind of fights. Fight somebody. I saw somebody suggest Jorge Garcia, which I think would be a pretty good matchup. I think that Madrimov beats him, but you want somebody that Madrimov can stop and look good, and everyone's like, wow, okay, this guy's back. And somebody with more of a name than Salazar, but definitely don't put him in with Boots, because that Madrimov would not have a good night with Boots or Virgil or Fandora, anybody at the top of the division. And then before that, Omari Jones goes the distance for the first time, beats up fellow undefeated or formerly undefeated Jerome Baxter, drops him in the first round, and then, he tried, and it wasn't for lack of effort, but Baxter was just a tough guy, and Jones still looked really good. Shutout victory, as did Zaquin Moses, also had a shutout victory. No knockouts on that card. And there was also very little knockouts on Zuffa Boxing 1. Let's talk about it. Man, I thought this was a very strong debut overall. I have a lot of notes, but for the starters, the fights themselves, Callum Walsh, Carlos Ocampo, bit boring, but Callum Walsh completely whitewashes him. I had the fight 98-90, and that was 2 points being offered just because he got dropped from a very quick flash knockdown in round number 6. Other than that, completely dominated Ocampo. Didn't stop him, but went the distance and looked okay. Now at middleweight, he definitely looked a little bit bigger in the ring than usual. And, headlines, there's not really much to say about it. I think that he could fight the winner of Boachek-Butayev next week, or he could fight Misael Rodriguez, who I thought looked really good against Austin Deonda through 4 rounds. They're both undefeated. Deonda has a little bit of an eye injury, I think, and then the fight gets called off after 4. So kind of wish we got to see a little bit more, but Rodriguez, again, was dominating him. Again, not from a lack of effort from Deonda, and that's really the main focal point of this card if it was the matchmaking. I feel like the matchmaking was really, really strong for a boxing event. Before that, you had Julian Rodriguez upsetting Cain Sandoval. Now, that one was also a very wide scorecard. I had Julian Rodriguez winning 99-91 when I thought Cain Sandoval was going to come in and win it. That's 2 wins in a row for Rodriguez over undefeated opponents. Upset Avius Griffin big time and now upsets Cain Sandoval. So he's definitely making himself a little bit of a face of Zuffa Boxing, one of their stars when he was definitely not a star a year ago. Cain Sandoval, an undefeated guy before this, and Rodriguez just kind of dominated him and looked fantastic. Even in the later rounds where he's tired and doesn't look as fresh, Sandoval is just coming forward, just pointless aggression, no strategic skill to it, just kind of throwing, and Rodriguez is just kind of punching him. Sandoval's just walking into the punches, and Rodriguez looked tired, but he was still winning all those rounds. You had Omar Trinidad, with a pretty. With a fairly wide, actually no, not really wide. It was pretty close actually looking at my scorecards, but Trinidad stopped him in the 10th round. A little bit of an odd stoppage, but Ornelas did not really have much left. He dropped him 3 times between the second and third rounds, and then Ornelas does come back and have some rounds where he wins in the second half of the fight, but then ultimately does get stopped. Trinidad looked pretty good to me, one of his better performances in a while. Floyd Diaz beating Guillermo Gutierrez. That was a good match-made fight. 77-75 on my card. Emiliano Cardenas, edging out a win over Marcus Harris. Troy Nash edging out a win over Jacob Ramos. That was a phenomenal fight to kick off the card. And then Robert Merriweather was getting a lot of love. He got a bonus performance of the night for his decision victory over Cesar Correa, which was a very one-sided affair against an undefeated guy. So the matchmaking is definitely the shout-out of this card. And I thought the production was good. As for the things, we have to talk about, speaking of the broadcast, Matt Kellerman glazing the shit out of Dana White and Zuffa Boxing, saying, "Oh man, this is so great. I've been waiting for this since I was a kid." And he's like, "All right, dude, we get it. Stop trying to sell us. We're already watching. The judging is not any different to what it would normally be." Another thing I didn't like was the trunks. They do not have sponsors on their trunks. They don't have personalized. They're all just colors like you see in the UFC, and I absolutely hate that. I'm a little bit okay with it, the UFC, but boxing, you have got these big trunks. It kills me to see that there's nothing on them and they're just, I don't know. It really frustrates me. So I hope that they fix that and allow these fighters a chance to sponsor themselves. I'm really disappointed to see that, but also not terribly surprised. In the Apex, it looked okay. Still not a lot of people there, not a lot of seating, but in the atmosphere, was very quiet. So I hope that these events can get out of the Apex, but it was an improvement over the UFC Apex cards because now you actually have a crowd there, and we'll see that in 2 weeks' time when we have the first UFC Apex event of the year. And also another thing that somebody pointed out, the judges had monitors in front of them, which I think is something that we've all been asking for a long time, so they can see every angle of the fight and have maybe even have the ability to replay. Maybe not that, but see the angles. have a better view of the ring besides just sitting and looking up where it's not a great view. So I thought that was a change that they made that I really like. So overall, strong debut for them. The pacing was great. They've got another card next week. I mean, look, Zuffa Boxing being able to put on competitive fights, have good fighters, and keep a consistent schedule is going to be huge because right now they have more events planned besides maybe Matchroom in the U.S. than anyone else. I mean, Golden Boy and PBC and Top Rank have 0 plans scheduled for the United States. Top Rank has 1 in Puerto Rico. Golden Boy has none. PBC has none. That's not good. Not good at all. So, yeah. Got to get that fixed. Speaking of Zuffa, Jai Pataya confirms he will return on Sunday, March 8th at the Apex, which is unfortunate. It's going to be a bigger fight for him. Having Opataya headline, I was hoping it would be out of the Apex, but I'm expecting this year we're not going to see any events outside of the Apex, and we're just going to see them all there, which is whatever, but, hopefully they can graduate out of there. And then he also at the event faced off with Noel Mikhailian, WBC champion. Maybe they get a unification. I mean, it's so weird with Zuffa Boxing because they say that they're not going to work with the sanctioning bodies, and then Jai comes in and says, I want unifications, I want undisputed. And if they're able to deliver on him on that, where Matchroom and even Tasman Fighters couldn't do that for the last few years, then that's big, and he's getting what he wants. But it would just be so weird for them to come in and promote WBC and IBF Unified Championship when that's the exact thing that they're trying to get away from. So, I don't know. Another event we did have was Tito Sanchez versus, I believe his name was, Jesus Ramirez. Sanchez stopped him in the 6th round. I thought he looked pretty good. Some knockdowns on the way there. Leonardo Rubalcava, good return to the ring for him coming off his first loss. But really the standout, I mean, he also had a really good knockout from Art Barrera Jr., very nice knockout. But standout of that card was Azat Hovhannissian, who completely dominated the previously undefeated Eidos Medid on a week's notice. Comes in at 130, which he doesn't usually fight at, and, completely dog-walked him. And it was a really fun fight to watch, and he was showboating and all this. And I was like, wow, dude, like, he still got it. And so I was really impressed by Hovhannissian. Crazy A, he's a crazy man. His speech after was very funny, and yeah, I enjoyed that show a good bit, and I thought that Hovhannissian was definitely the standout of the night in California. Some other news before we wrap it up. Look, Shakur, we talked about him potentially for Muratalla. He says that he is going to be moving back down to 135 pounds unless there's a big fight that calls for him. I don't think Muratalla is that, especially when he is already at 135. That makes more sense. Shakur is not the biggest guy. I think we're going to see a pretty decent weight difference between him and Teo when they actually do come into the ring on January 31st, which is just next week, which is crazy. Even though in their face-off they seem similar size, I think Teo's a naturally bigger guy than him. Shakur saying he doesn't even have to cut weight for this, so he walks around at probably around 140, 145. So I don't blame him for wanting to go back down to 135. I feel like all the big fights for him are at 140, though. Once he goes back to 135, I mean, sure, there's Roach and Schofield and Muratalla, and new guys will emerge, but I don't see him fighting Abdullah Mason. I think that they're guys, they're boys. I feel like there's just a lot of good names from 140, but it is what it is. There's no reason in going up and fighting all the bigger guys when you can fight people that are more your size. Bad news: Adam Azim, Gustavo Lemos is off, both with injuries. So apparently Lemos had an injury, and they were looking for another opponent, and they were about to try and lock one down, and then Azim himself gets injured in his final sparring match, and yeah. So very odd that Lemos got injured and we didn't hear about it, and then they're looking for one. I guess they're just trying to keep it quiet until then, and then Azim gets one. So the fight is not canceled; it's postponed. So they are going to do it at a later date. We don't know when that is. Probably in one of Boxer's planned shows. They've got one in March, one in April, and one in May that have yet to be announced. It also does not sound like the card has been canceled, which is good. When Moses Atom and Jermaine Franklin got postponed, they postponed the entire event, which I hated. That was supposed to be yesterday. So I'm glad that Boxer's going to keep the show going. It looks like Fran Hennessy versus Elie Boutel is now going to be the main event. It's just not a great main event at all on the BBC with Greatest Krause on there. I think he maybe could have even been main event, but they're doing that in the OVO Wembley Arena, which seats about 12,000 people. I'm curious how many people show up for that. So again, no updates yet. Maybe they actually do scale it down and put it like the Indigo at the O2, something like that. I could see them doing, and it's probably the right idea to do. But look, they want to. I like them keeping the card on. We need that. I don't want to lose another full card of boxing.
I would like if they can keep those fighters active and get them paid, It seems like Wilder and Chisora is signed. Derek Chisora posted a video of him signing the contract and FaceTiming Wilder, and he tagged Misfits and KS, or I don't know if he tagged Misfits, but he tagged KSI and Sauerland and, all those guys. So it seems like this is going to be a Misfits Pro show, which is insane. Now, there was rumors of Frank Warren potentially having some issues claiming that Chisora was still his fighter, whereas Chisora argued that that deal ended after the Otto Wallin fight, which, we all thought Chisora was still with Frank. That's what it seemed like. And now all of a sudden he's not. But apparently those issues have now been cleared up. Some source said that, that they figured it out and Frank is allowing them to just do this fight and he's not going to be a part of it. He's no longer contractually obliged. I mean, I would hate it if Frank got in the way because, dude, this is literally Derek's last fight probably. Just let him. You don't need to be a part of it. Just let him do it. It's not like a guy you've got years left with, like Anthony Yard. When they were having issues with their contract. I mean, Anthony Yard's got a few more fights left in him. Derek Chisora's got one. Not a lot of point in fighting to hold on to him. Moving on from there, again, back to Zuffa Boxing. Apparently, the Bam Rodriguez rumors were true. Eddie Hearn says that they have matched Zuffa Boxing's offer and that Rodriguez is going to stay with him and that they're planning an undisputed fight with Wilbaldo Garcia in April. I would love to see that happen for Bam to get undisputed. I don't know how likely it is because we know the IBF is already going to order Garcia to defend against Andrew Maloney. And I don't know how willing Maloney's going to be. In fact, I'm pretty sure he said, or is it Jason? I can't remember. I think Jason maybe. I don't know. Whichever one is the super flyweight, not the bantamweight. But we know that Maloney has said that he's like, I'm not stepping aside. I'm going to get that fight against Garcia when I get ordered. So if he does take a step-aside deal, then great. But I don't know if it happens. And if it doesn't happen, I expect Bam to move up to 118 and probably challenge the winner of Medina versus Curia, which is on February 6th. That's going to be a matchroom fight. I think that's pretty likely. But as for the Zuffa Boxing aspect, there's a lot of rumors that Bam was going to go with them. And it kind of makes you think like, wow, maybe those rumors were true. And he was actually considering it. And then Matchroom's like, all right, we'll match your offer, which means that Zuffa was offering him a bit of a bag. And they are trying to steal Eddie's fighters. And it shows that these promotional companies are going to have to pay up to hold on to their guys because otherwise they're going to go to Zuffa. So I think that Zuffa is definitely coming in and both not promising or delivering what they promise and also delivering what they promise. With the whole sanctioning body stuff, not necessarily. But with the coming in and taking a lot and signing a lot of good fighters, maybe. Dimitri Bivol, Michael Eifert is head to purse bids. It seems like this fight is going to happen. Seems like it's in the plans for March or April time. And, us heading to purse bids. Hopefully Matchroom can win the purse bid. We know they usually don't. But, dude, if we have to go watch this on, some random small event somewhere with whoever Eifert is promoted by, that would definitely not be optimal. And I hope this is going to end up on a Saudi show, of course. But, yeah. So hopefully that fight gets done soon and we can just see Bivol back in the ring because it's been almost a year. There's rumors that there's going to be no cage sponsorships for the White House. I don't hate that. I really don't hate that. Make it feel special. Maybe the government says, no, we don't want this to feel like too much of a commercial event. We want it to feel like a celebration. We want it to feel like a UFC x White House, not just another UFC card. And you'd have to think they'd be paying a lot of money because we know this is going to be an expensive event. Dana White's saying that it's more expensive than the Sphere card, which was $20 million. And, no sponsorships as well. It's definitely going to hurt UFC, and they've got deals. So I don't know if that's as likely, but we'll see. Just a few other things. Rumors, Frank Martin, Regis Prograis could be next. As Frank Martin said, nobody really wants to fight except for Regis. I respect it. That's a good matchup. Both these guys need a win. Regis is on his way out, I think, and I think Frank Martin's probably going to catch him at the right time, coming off a knockout of the year candidate. I think Frank Martin beats Regis Prograis, but I would not mind seeing that. It's a good fight. And then Johnny Fisher has said he's been offered a British title fight versus Jimmy TKV and says he's agreed to all the terms and stuff. They just need to, get a plan. So I thought TKV was going to fight someone a little bit better than Fisher. But if Fisher does get it, good for him, I guess. But that is not going to go his way. TKV is probably going to stop him. Johnny Fisher is not British title level. Last fight didn't even look good in the comeback after the Dave Allen loss. I do not think it's a good idea at all to get in with TKV, and I think that he can still build his way up before getting to that British title fight, get a few more wins, get a little bit more money. No reason to jump into it right now, but it is what it is. Look, that's all I've got for today. Huge weekend for combat sports in Vegas. I was really, really pleased with the UFC product. We got another one next Saturday, 325 from Australia, back-to-back numbered events, which is great. The broadcast itself didn't really feel too different to the old era. I mean, there's hardly any difference in the actual broadcast itself. Like, it looks the exact same, all the graphics and stuff, but I'm okay with that. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But yeah, good events, good fights. I mean, Gaethje Paddy is going to go down. I don't know if I'd go down in history, but it'll definitely go down in the record books as one hell of a fight. But yeah, hope everybody has a great week. Get ready because we got UFC 325 and Shakur versus Teofimo and lots of other fights next week. Murtaza Kelly, Zayas Barao. No longer Azim Lemos. Zuffa Boxing 2 as well. Yeah, a lot of stuff to look forward to. Thank you guys so much for listening, and peace out.